And we're live. I'm here with Sammy. Sammy, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing great. I got a new camera. I got lighting situated. I had to move my entire desk to make it fit. It's been. I got home and okay, I had 2 hours to record. Let me just see if I can set this up. And it was like when the camera was up where my desk normally is, you can see my entire room, the bed, the desk, all of it. And so I had to spend an hour just reorganizing it. And I was like, oh, I got a sour store, and it's 6:30. Then we had all the mic problems. So the scene was supposed to start at 7, and it's 7:30. So, you know how it goes.
Yeah, it looks nice. You have the whole bookshelf background now.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty great.
Thank you. I love it. Yeah. If we get anybody in the stream, we'll only get them for 30 minutes because Pete's going live at 8. And so he keeps sniping my streams. It's not intended. I know it's not intended, but I swear to God, every time I want to go live, and I got some cool guests I'll go live at 7:30. He's like 8 o'clock going live. And I'm like,
your ears opener, I guess.
Yeah, but it's gonna be good. So you wrote an article called "Multiculturalism has a contradiction in terms." It's on the Hoppian. The link is in the description. So what made you decide to do live reading? What made you decide to write the article?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm trying to think what made me think about it. I've just been like seeing all of the cultural issues going on in America today, how divided everything is. Like literally every issue is just like a binary switch of everyone hating each other. I mean, I've been interested in like the topics of secession, specifically of like, like cultural groups. So, and then I was just like thinking, I don't know why, almost with Juneteenth and all, just the concept of multiculturalism and just the pushing it down of people's throats. It made me kind of think like, like it's kind of like a contradiction. Like it's just like is an oxymoron almost.
Yeah. Now I gotta say it was interesting that you used the term multiculturalism because that's not really a term you hear much nowadays. It was like an early 2000s, late 90s kind of term. I don't really hear multiculturalism much nowadays. But so is there any reason you chose multiculturalism as a term, or like is it still like talked about in your circles a lot? Because I haven't heard the term in quite a while.
Yeah, I think it's almost been dropped as a common term. I mean, I think it's kind of just like implicitly accepted as the norm. I mean, diversity is a big one, inclusion, all of that. I know multiculturalism is a term that was brought up a lot, in the 90s and 2000s. So. Yeah.
Next question: have you read Paul Gottfried's Multiculturalism?
I have not. I read maybe in the introduction when I was doing some research on this article, but I didn't. I put it on like a little bookmark of things to read, but I did not read it.
I highly recommend it. It's my second favorite Gottfried book, but actually no, technically it's my favorite Gottfried book is the other Gottfried book I really like. He only wrote like the intro for, and like the last chapter it was a collection of essays. But it's a really good book, and Gottfried is the man, especially in the paleo circles. He's like I'm in the paleo circle. I think you're the Hoppian, so you're kind of in the paleo circles as well. But it's just he's not brought enough by by most libertarian people, except for like Tom Woods when he has them on,
Yeah, he's like on that intersection of paleo lib, paleo con, but yeah.
Okay, well let's do this. I'm gonna share the screen. Let me just get that up. Okay, can everybody see that? Wonderful.
I can see it.
So yeah, awesome. So how we're gonna do this is you're just gonna read it, and then you can stop when you want to comment. I'll stop when I want to comment, and we'll just go from there.
Okay, sounds good. And I have it up on another screen, so you can like follow along, but don't feel like you have to.
No problem.
Okay. Culture is a beautiful product of human society that develops out of the natural order. Communities are naturally forming units that develop through shared experiences, beliefs, traditions, and values. The foundation of community is, of course, the family, and out of this structure, farther relationships are built that form the hierarchical web of society. Out of these naturally ordered structures, individuals take on a social identity, societies grow, and culture develops. Ludwig von Mises points to the division of labor as the function that separated man from animal and allowed society to develop. Due to the increased productivity from the division of labor, it is in man's best interest to cooperate with those around him. Mises viewed this as the cause of the formation of the family structure and of society as a whole. As he remarks, the division of labor turns the self-sufficient individual into the dependent on his fellow man, the social animal of which Aristotle spoke. So one thing, I guess, is that I was trying to, because it's interesting, my main influences are like biblical, and then also, like Misesian, and the Mises Hoppe development for society isn't exactly, it's like agnostic or secular, but it's still very interesting to me. And I think it's compatible of kind of like combining society with like economic principles, which is something that I think is very true and important.
There's something about how I put this. I really enjoy when I can get an economic breakdown of a historical event to see the economic factors that were leading into it. And so I think I really enjoy Hoppe's book, what's it called? Economy, Society, and History, which we did a podcast on.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that book because I kind of go into like the economic causes of like societal growth. But I think we did a great job covering that because it was you and with Pillar 20th Century, we were able to add into like Catholic and Orthodox and other factors into the story, which makes it a full fleshed out story. A lot of people's account of culture and societal growth does not account for economics. They kind of just go through some like weird Wigsy of history sometimes, but they kind of account for how things go. And so I think economics is a good thing to include in your breakdown and explanation of culture.
Yeah, it's interesting because economics today is so separated from like the social sciences that there really is no compatibility. But Austrian economics and classical economics really was a social science, so it adds to analysis that I think mainstream economists don't have today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll continue. The division of labor is an innate feature of mankind that helps to reduce conflict in the world, as man can reason that he benefits from peaceful exchange. It would be wrong, however, to jump from this to the conclusion that universalism or globalism are ideals that should be strived toward. First, man is not homo economicus. Although economic and material matters are certainly important, there are other things in life that matter that cannot be captured by mere economic efficiency. Second, trade and cooperation do not imply a lack of borders or cultural distinctions. Both free trade and the division of labor are fully compatible with segregation and closed communities. As Hoppe explains, I'll go. We can talk and then go do the quote.
Yeah, this whole point here about the where was it at? Both free trade and division of labor can are fully compatible between segregation and closed communities. Something so painfully obvious as that countries can still trade and be distinct. I hear a lot when I bring up succession between success in any conversation. It's like, well, what about trade? If we separate as a nation, how are we gonna have trade? It's like we trade with China, we trade with Russia. I don't like you the people, the same people you those as the enemies, but we still trade with them, and they can't wrap their head around if America succeeds and different states go their own way, these things can still be trade. They just see it as like an impossibility. And it's just an obvious fact to people who know any economics, I feel like. And it just kind of speaks to people who not know any economics at all, that they don't see that as a possibility.
Mm-hmm. And I also think this point, and it's one that Hoppe makes, is kind of important because a lot of, I don't know, like bleeding heart libertarians will, make the point for open borders largely based on an economic analysis.
Yeah.
And I know that's like a big point of just like discussion in the libertarian space and obviously Hoppe takes this position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's who was it? There was that libertarian loser at the Cato. I think it was Cato, who was going to like debate Dave on open borders, but then backed out.
I forget his name.
He I can't remember no one should remember his name because he's worthless. But I think the reason he backed out is that he was probably going to take a purely economic standpoint of why it's good. And if I had to guess, Dave, when I heard him talk about open border stuff, takes more of a cultural viewpoint on like the importance of closed borders effect on culture. When people hear those arguments, culture always outweighs economics. Mm-hmm. Like this is like a big pinpoint I have with a lot of libertarians. Like economics doesn't convince anybody but autistic nerds like us. And so while it's great for understanding things, your argument cannot rest on economics because then it just kind of like goes over the heads and is ignored by most people.
hmm And yeah, I mean, again, I think the important distinction, if you're going from a libertarian ethic perspective, is that free trade implies a consenting party on both sides because someone has to deliver the item and someone has to receive the item. But when
Mm.
it's a person crossing a border rather than a good, that doesn't imply someone is receiving that person. So it doesn't guarantee like consent from both parties, and obviously it gets confusing with the, well, we have a state and we have borders, so what now? But yeah, it is just looking at the economic side of things is kind of ignorant in my view.
I agree. Let's continue.
So I'll do the quote. Not even the most exclusive form of segregationism has anything to do with the rejection of free trade and the adoption of protectionism. From the fact that one does not want to associate with or live in the neighborhood of blacks, Turks, Catholics, or Hindus, it does not follow that one does not want to trade with them from a distance. To the contrary, it is precisely the absolute voluntariness of human association and separation, the absence of any form of forced integration, that makes peaceful relationships, free trade, between culturally, racially, ethnically, or religiously distinct people possible. And yeah, I think that just nails the point home. Throughout time, cultures and societies have possessed a large degree of homogeneity. Not only was this a simple outcome of genetics, but it was also a conscious decision. Tribes and villages would form based on common ties such as lineage, faith, or covenants. In fact, the term culture implies homogeneity since it is defined as the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. If there is no homogeneity, there would be no group for a culture to develop from.
Got nothing to add if you want to continue.
Okay. This brings us to the subject of multiculturalism, a major theme of 21st century America. This boils down to the idea that all cultures can and should be regarded as equal, and that diversity should be instilled to promote open-mindedness. The concept of multiculturalism stems from both the philosophy of egalitarianism and moral relativism. Egalitarianism tells us that all people are equal, and therefore the cultures and traditions of all groups should be treated with the same level of interest and respect. Moral relativism tells us that there's no true objective morality and that all judgments are based only relative to the situation one finds oneself in. With no guiding principles for good and bad, all cultures must be viewed indifferently.
Yes. Now, I always, whenever I come to these discussions of morality in different cultures, I rarely hear the term moral relativist. I always hear the term culturally relativist or culturally relative, because it's like I've heard the argument before with neoliberal friends of mine that you only think these kind of cultures are immoral because of the Western culture you were raised in, and there's no sense of how do I put this? I had a tweet about it recently where it was people our age today view the inability to call out error of other cultures as a more more superiority, and why the fuck was that? I think it might have been a car accident outside my house.
Oh gosh.
Well, if we hear cops roll up, that's gonna be annoying, but whatever. That completely threw me off. I lost my complete train of thought from that.
You were talking about the tweet you made.
Yes. There's nothing humble or morally superior about refusing to call out error of other cultures, especially when other cultures are immoral. It's not bravery, it's cowardness. And they will hold a position that their refusal to make moral claims as if they are superior for you because they refuse to fall down to this lower level where they are. Like a lot of people I feel like view this cultural relativism or moral relativism as they have transcended the binary of like good or bad for most people. Like it's this weird, like there's this weird superiority about like, oh, well, you only see it because of this reason. I don't see that kind of. It's a very like they think they transcended morality by refusing to call out moral error.
Yeah, I think there's those people, and then I think to some extent some people just are so unsure of what to believe they kind of take the easy route of just saying, well, it depends on your opinion, man. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, most of the people are cowardly in my view, but let's continue.
Okay. Culture is a beautiful part of humanity, but is ignorant to act as though all cultures are equal. Some societies have achieved greater things than others. Some have upheld truth and goodness better than others, and some are more compatible with human flourishing. It would be foolish, for example, to pretend as though the great works of ancient Rome or the Republic of Florence were not superior to other cultures. This is exactly why these cultures are studied so extensively. Besides the enormous problems with egalitarianism and moral relativism, it is important to question if multiculturalism as a concept is even achievable. Since culture stems from a shared belief system or a set of traditions, multiculturalism is a contradiction in terms. Instead of upholding a variety of cultures, multiculturalism inevitably weakens and destroys culture in the name of diversity. This is not to say that there cannot be an overlap of cultural development, such as what has historically taken place in cities, but rather that an essential piece of culture is homogeneity, which multiculturalism is the antithesis of. Historically, even within cities, the most diverse areas of civilization, segregation was still the norm, with various groups occupying distinct areas. People were safer and more comfortable living among their own groups, and this allowed customs and traditions to be upheld in a way that would not be possible. Even in America, which many consider to be a melting pot, different groups settled in separate locations: Puritans in New England, Quakers in Rhode Island, Catholics in Maryland, etc.
Yeah, Catholics in Maryland. I've been reading a book recently on the Catholics in colonial America, and it's interesting to kind of hear some stories about the laws pertaining to Catholicism, the Catholic in America. Like,
I was just reading about Catholics. I was reading a wiki article. Apparently, like, they occupied Maryland, and then Protestants like became a majority, and then they banned Catholicism in Maryland or something.
Yeah. There were laws against for a while, because a lot of Protestants didn't believe in celebrating Christmas because they believed it was a pagan holiday. There were actual like laws against celebrating Christmas where the government would confiscate presents. Like it's insane. Like this really does point to the view that America never really had the view of upholding religious liberties. They really only kind of accepted freedom of speech for freedom of religion because they couldn't decide which one to pick without they obviously I knew which one they wanted to pick, but they couldn't make a decision without alienating a whole bunch of people. And so they kind of had to go to like, well, you can all practice your freedom of religion, when that was like not the norm.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like good example like of the Catholics in Maryland is like, since things are gonna inevitably be political, you should be around people. It's important to be physically around people that share your values, because people inevitably are going to, use politics to force beliefs on your area. So
that's just and yeah, this is actually been, I got a lot of heat from my friends. At this point, I've decided to stop talking politics with people I know in real life, because it's just not worth it. And I said the goal of any political action should be to create a society in which you live in an echo chamber. And they, of course, like, no, but what if you're wrong on something? Like, well, then let me be wrong. Let me you go do yours. Like, let me be wrong over here, and I can make fun of you. You can make fun of me. We don't have to talk to each other. That's fine. We don't have to talk to each other about these kind of things.
Yeah. In some ways, I'm sometimes like unsure. Like I'm sometimes not 100% confident in my belief. So I'm like, well, at least if we have like separate governments, California can go like screw up over there, and it's kind of like a social experiment, and we can have like each different little state trying their own policies and see like what works out. Like that's like, interesting to me. Where if we have like one world government, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Let's continue.
As Hoppe observes, the settlement of the North American continent confirmed the elementary sociological insight that all human societies are the outgrowth of families and kinship systems, and hence are characterized by a high degree of internal homogeneity, that likes typically associate with likes, and distance and separate themselves from unlikes. Without a common bond, there is no basis for social cohesion, which is a prerequisite for the development and sustainability of true culture and society. Both academic studies and mere observation support the fact that multiculturalism weakens the social trust and unity. Multiculturalism is not a position of equilibrium, and there are essentially no historical examples of multicultural societies that did not end in either secession or the stamping out of dissident cultures. The real culture in multiculturalism is the ideology of egalitarianism and moral relativism, and this must come at the expense of true cultures. cultures may be able to maintain their surface level traditions, such as music or food, but any part of the culture that interferes with the multicultural agenda cannot be allowed to survive. Ironically, multiculturalism results in the destruction of the very things it pretends to promote.
Spot on. I mean, just spot on. It's yeah. I remember when I first time I read that, I was just like I wanted to like screenshot and send it to you. It was like the 100 emojis. So it was just like this is spot on right there. Like that is good job on that one.
Yeah, one thing that like when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, I mean, we do celebrate like, you know, different holidays of different groups, and I mean, on the surface level, it is multicultural, but if you think about it, it's kind of like no real part of a culture is allowed to exist, like, or no more deeper part, like, I don't know, like any traditional values that go against the multicultural agenda aren't allowed. Like if a culture is against, you know, like
They're allowed to
homosexual
keep
marriage or something.
they're allowed to keep the aesthetics of a culture, but not the actual things behind the culture.
Yeah, and then for some cultures that's even banned, like the Confederate flag or something, you know.
Yeah, like they really the cultures they like become tokenized, and it becomes this example for them to hold up as like, see, we have black people, and they like Nancy Pelosi walking out with that African job saying, it's like they're tokenizing cultures because it makes them feel good, because again, multiculturalism is kind of born out of the whole liberal need to be around people who aren't like them so they can feel better about other people who are surrounded with people they only agree with.
Like, and like, yeah, even the some true cultural parts of like the minority cultures aren't really accepted. Like I haven't watched the Matt Walsh documentary, but
I have.
Like when he's interviewing like the African tribes and stuff, it's like that, you know, everywhere but the US, those are the normal values people hold, but it's not like multiculturalists are trying to feel like, oh, we need to be accepting of those views. It's like, no, it goes against the main agenda, then it's cut out.
Like I was in an Italian pizza shop the other week, and there was an Asian dude, an Italian dude, a Jewish dude, and a black guy. I was at a table like Indian pizza. And I was like, okay, neat. People can get along. My friend was just like, he was just a little high. He was just looking at it in amazement, like, whoa. I'm like, you really are like tokenizing their existence right now, dog. Like you are tokenizing these people for your own amusement. This is you complain about this kind of shit in movies all the time, but here you are doing it.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, obviously, different people can get along. We've seen that historically and just intuitively, and I think that's a good thing. But that doesn't imply that a society as a whole can function under either rule of law or one set of beliefs without at least some social cohesion. And that's one of the weird things to me about today, is that it's almost like, is it purposely like self-sabotaging, because there isn't even like an American like identity anymore, if that makes sense. Like I don't know what the idea is, if it's like, but it is interesting, like, oh, let in as many immigrants as we need, but also don't try to Americanize them because that's like offensive or something. I don't know.
How dare you ask a Walmart employee to speak English? I mean, I was complaining about that a while ago, actually. And people got mad at me for complaining about that. I was like, no, I'm in a Walmart. This is an American company. I don't want to have an employee go get me a different employee who speaks my language. Like it's yeah. Let's continue. Where are we at?
I think the alienation part. Down a bit. Yeah.
There it is.
In Alienation, Peter Brimlow looks through the major examples of ethnically diverse countries throughout history and finds a consistent pattern of either successful breakaway movements or violent repression taking place in each case. Even supposedly successful examples of multicultural societies are far more homogeneous than they seem. Switzerland, for example, is broken up into largely ethnically homogeneous cantons. Most recently, the canton of Jura was formed in 1979 as a separatist movement of French-speaking Catholics breaking off from the primarily German-speaking Protestant canton of Bern. That was something interesting to read up on. I've heard about it, but I didn't know the details. And it is interesting how Switzerland operates. As many problems as I feel like they have. I do think they have some things much better together. Like the fact that they could like, it's weird. I feel like the U.S. is by far is the only place where like cultural groups are not respected to be like kept separate. It's weird. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel you. It's I'm trying to figure out how to say it the way we haven't already said it. You know, like and I'm blanking on it. I'm completely blanking on it. It was yeah. Let's continue. We see a complete like wall right there, but let's continue.
If multiculturalists were serious about their alleged desires for promoting a diversity of culture, they would be the largest proponents of secessionist movements, especially when led by an ethnic or cultural minority. Hoppe explains, secession increases ethnic, linguistic, religious, and cultural diversity, while centuries of centralization have stamped out hundreds of distinct cultures. Secession will end the forced integration brought about by centralization, and rather than stimulating social strife and cultural leveling, will promote the peaceful cooperative competition of different territorial separate cultures.
I want to point out on this point about especially when led by an ethnic multicultural was serious about their alleged desire for promoting diversity culture, they would be lots of points of success in this movement, especially when led by an ethnic or cultural minority. This made me think of the difference between Malcolm X and Martin Luther. Because I've been reading up on Malcolm X, and I love the guy. He sounds amazing. I don't always agree with him, but I enjoyed listening to him speak. And then Martin Luther, after hearing stuff about him from Thaddeus Russell, really did seem like he hated black culture. Like it's anyone who doesn't know the story in the because sometimes I forget I have an audience to listen to this, and so I just like say something, someone would nod, I go, oh yeah, he knows what I'm talking about, and then move past it. And I'll get texts like, what were you talking about in the podcast? Because like you didn't elaborate. I'm like, oh yeah, I have to elaborate. So anybody who doesn't know, lots of but I haven't read this story in a while. But I mean, we can as I can. Martin Luther really did not like black culture, and told a lot of his like followers, like constituent type people, to dress like the white man, to show up to work on time, to stop listening to certain kinds of music, and basically he viewed the best way for black people to gain equality would be to emulate the white man and become like them, just trying to get rid of, and he really puts against black culture. While Malcolm X seemed much more in favor and supporting of the black identity and the black culture, than try to mold them into a lesser version of the white man or something. I always feel weird saying the white man, but I can't think of a better way to like phrase it, you know?
Yeah. It is interesting, and I think it kind of boils down to an unrealistic view of the world by well-intentioned leftists. Like the whole, let's all just get along. Like realistically, people like, I don't know if it's like the unconstrained vision like the Thomas Sowell, but the idea that all of these different groups can somehow live together peacefully under one rule of law without any issues, like it, and I think that boils down to undermining any real differences between groups, because they would say that all differences come from like cultural, or your upbringing, but it's not actually important in the scheme of things. Whereas someone who respects different groups, but still is realistic about differences, would be someone promoting, like, we understand you're different and you're being oppressed under the current system. Like, why don't you just break off and go do your own thing? Which I think in a lot of cases is the more realistic option for everyone. It's not like one side winning. It's just peaceful separation.
Absolutely.
And I think that ties into the next part. So this is why Mises stressed secession as the ultimate means of achieving self-determination for ethnic and cultural groups. Although he did not believe this form of self-determination could be realistically carried out to the level of the individual, he stressed the importance for each group to be able to separate themselves and live according to their own traditions and laws. It is unrealistic to believe that many separate groups can live together in complete harmony while maintaining the homogeneity and social cohesion required for both cultural flourishing and an ordered society. Laws and societal etiquette cannot please everyone simultaneously, and the best way to show reverence for unique cultures is to allow them to exist unhindered.
I got nothing to add if you want to continue.
Sure. This article does not seek to address the malicious ends certain groups may be attempting to achieve under the guise of multiculturalism, which is a separate issue. Instead, this is an attempt to argue against forced integration and multiculturalism using the very goal multiculturalists act as though they were trying to achieve, respecting a variety of diverse cultures. Separatism does not imply hatred. On the contrary, it allows different groups to resolve jurisdictional disputes without the need for violence. Yeah, that was another thing, because I've been kind of thinking, I think there's, I guess, two groups. There's the people that genuinely are just like, I guess you could say well-intentioned leftists that actually, think what the programs are doing are good for everyone. And then I think there are people with, malicious agenda in changing, weakening societal bonds, because obviously that makes it a lot easier to accomplish a lot of different things.
Absolutely. This is the deliberate weakening of societal bonds is something I'm covering in the book I'm working on. And it's I'm reading a lot of Thomas Sowell, because he's been great on writing about specifically like the welfare effect on the family, or the people walking up to people's houses and, hey, if you're a single mom, you can have more money from the government.
Yeah.
Like that whole just the fact that kind of thing happened and is not brought up every single day as an indictment against the government is ridiculous to me. That is like they deliberately incentivized people to break up family structures. I mean, what the fuck? It's just
yeah, it is pretty crazy to think about those terrible, like the cyclical cycles of urban areas specifically in this country, but I'm sure a lot of other areas where basically the policies are such that it's hurting the people enough so that they vote for you to fix the problem that you're in the end causing. And I don't know what the end game is, because I think a lot of the urban areas are collapsing, obviously.
Yeah, my take on it, they had an end game, but they didn't anticipate their plan working so well and accelerating so quickly that now they're like, well, we plan to have 20 more years of this before we unveil the next step, and now we're not ready for that next step. And with the political capital being expended on COVID lockdowns and vaccine mandates and all that kind of stuff, they really don't have the political capital to push a new fix-all solution.
It is interesting to think about how well planned are the rulers versus just stumbling along, because in some ways you want to think it's like some secret mastermind, but at the same time there is a lot of impotence you see, and just the faults of central planning.
Yeah, there's a lot of my view on it is there are a lot of elites who understand the main ideology most of the managing class has, the HR people, the managing class, a lot of these kind of the managerial class, you could say. The essential ideology a lot of them possess, and it's good at using that to their own ends. And they didn't anticipate on several things happening so quickly.
It is interesting. There's the concept of basically a leech needs to keep their host well enough to be alive, so it's managing. But at the same time, I think there is a large incentive for elites and government actors to weaken society to become reliant, and without culture, without strong family or religious bonds, you're going to turn to the government and welfare as the first at the first sign of trouble.
Absolutely. And this whole culture of people have to who was it? Was it Jesse Kelly who recently said he's kicking his kids out of his house at 18 years old? There are a lot of people I know who have that mentality towards their kids. And the moment they turn 18, they want to kick them out. And people who are over 18 still living at home that I know are depressed as shit because they feel like they failed to get out of parents' house at the right time. No matter, they're complaining man, houses are so expensive, I can't afford anything. They accept that fact, but then they still revert to them blaming themselves for not having a good enough job. I'm like, dude, you're 19 years old, you have no experience. It was no way this was going to succeed for you. It's just very unlikely that you were going to have a successful. And the one of the economic collapses that led people to staying at homes, which I think is actually good. People should stay at homes longer. People should rely on family. For family bonds should be strong and should be stay at home for good reasons. But no one stay at home for good reasons nowadays. People who stay home are staying home because they can't afford to leave, and that just causes way more strife and depression than it should.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, like you were saying with the welfare, the existence of welfare disincentivizes, I mean, both cooperating and building like friendships, but also like cooperating with your own family. Like divorce rates, the reason divorce rates spike are because realistically there is a selfish reason for staying married, which is for survival. But if you can just jump out of that and get your money from elsewhere, then the incentives are all screwed up. And also I think in a society with less social cohesion, there's a lot less accountability when it comes to acting politically. Like you don't feel bad kind of taking money from welfare when you don't really know the people that are being taxed directly to pay for that. So it's just a very inhumane system that is kind of like lost a lot of its meaning, like deeper, like human meaning, like human relationship.
Absolutely. Let's continue.
Where
we at? We on the United States?
Last paragraph. Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
The United States today can hardly be considered a unified country, and the current form of globalist multiculturalism may be the final nail in the coffin for any form of national unity. In the past, there was at least an emphasis on the Americanization of immigrants, which helped to create at least some level of social cohesion between various groups. Due to multicultural and egalitarian movements, this practice has largely come to an end. As expectations for integrations have ended, solidarity between groups have fallen, and social disintegration has accelerated. Jura's secession from the Canton of Bern is a recent case of how two areas were able to peacefully separate in order to maintain distinct cultures. And this is an example the United States would be wise to learn from.
Wonderful article. Really enjoyed it, Sammy. It was a good one. I want to ask you what your take. Did you see Josh Denny's tweet about I did?
Was that the one Mac responded to?
Yep. Let me say.
Yeah, I was like checking it every few hours to see, like, because they were like neck and neck for which one had more likes, and I was like, okay, is he gonna ratio him or?
Yeah, it was very. I enjoyed reading the interaction. I would say I think Mac was spot on with everything he said.
Yeah, I do think it is a bit of the Lulbert, like we're all in this together. I don't know. I need to go pull it up real fast.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find it real quick. Here it is. Oh, apparently he's Owen McIntyre responded as well. Nice. Aren't they doing? If I remember correctly, they're doing a show together soon, actually, to discuss this. Oh. Let me just check his YouTube real quick. How do you spell his name? He has a name that I can just never spell. Owen McIntyre. I want to copy it from YouTube, from Twitter. Just gonna do that. Everybody who's listening to this as we kind of just try to fill time for 30 minutes with YouTube searches. Here it is. Can we escape identity politics with Josh Denny?
He's doing the whole show. I see the tweet. The only way to save America is to eliminate all identitarianism in our cultural systems and pave the way for one based on individualism and patriotism. And that's yeah. I don't know, individualism and patriotism. I don't know how those are the same, but whatever. I guess.
I'm currently working on an article on patriotism from a libertarian perspective. There was that whole shit show on Twitter a few weeks ago now about everyone arguing about how patriotism is bad because patriotism is bad because it led to like 9/11 policies, and nothing of the positive sides of patriotism that led to, like people actually coming, people who agree on codes are coming together. And so I'm currently working on the last details of the article, but it probably won't, I don't know when I'm post. Probably osteotomism. But I would say I think there's a. I like the sentiment of what he's saying, but that's probably because I'm so stuck in like a liberal frame, like Graham talked about. That when I read them, I'm like, oh, that sounds nice. Then I actually think about it, I'm like, that doesn't sound possible.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds nice. I don't think an identity implies conflict. I guess that's and the other thing is, how weak would a truly individualistic society be? I think it's only, again, like we were talking about earlier, it's only looking at the economics or materialistic, and there's more to society than just that. And I think that's like, just like an atheistic way of viewing the world, which, I mean, it's easy to fall into, but I think even Mises and Rothbard didn't actually believe that. So it's interesting that a lot of people pretend like that's what they believed.
Yeah, no, it's always. Now I've kind of like I've dropped libertarian the label, and it's really like the day I dropped it, and I started looking at all the libertarians, not as like people in my movement, but as, like people outside of my ideology. I could see a lot more Quins. There's still a lot of great people. There's still a lot of great libertarians I love. I would never doubt. I'm never gonna like dog on Rothbard because he's just great. But there was a lot of people I feel like who are the not just the individualistic libertarian type, but the atomization of individual libertarian type, who believed like this whole, who reject the idea of like family structure. Like, I don't know if you saw, but there was a Twitter thread from some guy called Colt on Twitter, who argued that there's a story about this little sister not wanting to watch her older sister's daughter for like 5 minutes as they take a shower.
Oh, I saw that. Was it on Reddit or something?
It was a Reddit post, but he said it on Twitter. Then Jay and Grant argued with them, and Nick, because Nick's great. And that whole thread, that's weird now. Like, this is an example of how to put this. Economics is, like I said, economics is good. But a lot of people, I feel like, tie economics into a entire like worldview, and there's certain things like the economic view of the individual is the individual acts is great for economics, but viewing all of society as only as individuals acting and never has family structures or kind of like sorting off all responsibilities is like this weird connection. A lot of the economic based libertarians that don't have anything, any religion or philosophy outside of their political ideology, they kind of speak these really weird, incorrect views that just kind of accelerate from that one base. Like economics cannot be your overall worldview philosophy, and it can't be your religion.
Yeah, I mean, I think a bit more accurate than even economics, now that I think about it, is more like the legal framework, like the NAP. Like, there's like the joke is that the NAP isn't the end all be all of being a moral person. And I mean, I think any good libertarian would not, well, I think any libertarian I like would acknowledge that, but a lot of time you need some basis for your morality outside the non-aggression principle.
Absolutely.
I mean, Rothbard was a bit of a lulbert in the 60s and 70s, and I think he came out of that later in his life. But I mean, he still would emphasize in all of his legal writing that this does not imply that someone doing this is a good person. And it's just a legal code for how to have society function. But yeah, like basically like, oh, I don't have any obligations to anyone else.
Yeah, that's a lot of libertarians. Sorry, I want to clarify Napatarians, because they're all good libertarians. There are zero good Napatarians, and a lot of the Napatarians will go by libertarian. So you gotta be on the watch out for those kind of people.
Yeah, it is interesting. It just kind of shows that the NAP or your legal system is just a very rough framework for the legal system of society, but there's so much more inside of that. There's more to life than that.
It's great for figuring out how to solve conflict. It is not great for determining the morality of said conflict. Or really, like, it's great to say by that. It's great for solving it. It's not great for determining blame or right or wrong in those scenarios, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. If you're on libertarian Twitter, the only thing you share in common is the legal system. There could be such a wide range of actual, like, the moral beliefs, which a lot of times are more important to people, at least in the real world. And that's why, I like my home feels to be like the libertarian, like legal framework, but definitely the more right wing conservative, or I hate the word conservative, traditional, moral values.
There needs to be a better term for like right wing traditional values besides just conservative. I mean, I hate that term so much, dude. It's just it's just one. It's a bad term. It's associated with all these terrible sayings, and even Rothbard wrote about in Strategy for the Right how it's just a bad term. Which I need to have Wapiro back on to finish that live reading. It's been like 2 weeks since the last one.
Yeah, I mean, right wing is all I really feel like I have. I mean, there's a lot of terminology, but that stuff is weird.
Yep, absolutely. This is why I've decided to go non-ideological. I'm just right wing, and I pull what I like, which is like 80% libertarianism.
It is interesting because I think a lot of people. I mean, I think a lot of libertarians are like perfectionists that want to have a perfect legal framework in their head, and yeah, I mean that's where the whole like living in Kapistan. It doesn't matter right now, not all the time. So
exactly. Well, we finished the article. We've gone for 48 minutes. That's a respectable episode. Sammy, give your plugs. What can people find you at?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Haigfish. I just wrote this article for the Hoppians, so definitely check them out. Hopefully I'll write for them again. They're great, obviously.
They're great.
There you get the libertarian stuff without the cringe. So
yes, that is the best way to describe the Hoppian people. I mean, Jared Mack. What's it called? What's his name? Taylor. He's good. He's been on my show once, and we've set up like multiple times for him to come back on to keep falling through. I need to have him on eventually because he's only on for my Lou Rockwell Respect stream.
Yeah, I remember that. I think he was supposed to be on the first podcast I did with you.
That's why he's supposed to be on for Economy, Society, and History. Would have been great to have him on for that. That would have been fun. I got to text him so he can figure something out. But anyway, well, guys, this is another episode of Faith, Liberty, and Praxis, season 2, episode 11. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You know what to do. It's YouTube. Okay, I'm not going to tell you every time. A lot of great stuff coming out. I'm interviewing. I can't pronounce his name. I want to say Burger from the Hopper Hours. Bungo. I don't know how his name is, but the Hopper Hours guy. He's going on tomorrow night. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. But yeah, have a good night.